Here we can see the internal structure of the dicot root and the monocot root. So dicot means if we can able to split the seeds into two. So in tamarind or in beans or peas, we can able to split the seeds into two. That is why it is known as dicot. And in monocot, we can't able to split the seeds into two. Like wheat, rice, there we can't able to split the seeds into two. That is why it is called monocot. So when seeing the root, this dicot root will be taproot system. That is the center primary root will be there. From the primary root secondary root will arise. Then from there tertiary root, like that is the dicot root. And in monocot root, the root will be fibrous root system. Fibrous means like this. The root will be like this, fibers. So that is the dicot root and the monocot root. And if we cut the root like this, that is if we cut the root horizontally, and if we see the root from the top, it will be in circular form, right? Circular form. And now we are going to see the parts which are present inside this root. That is, this two picture is depicting. That this is the root system of dicot root, and there is the internal parts of the monocot root. We can see the differences between this dicot root and monocot root here. So these roots always contains root hairs in the outer layer. So this is the outer layer, and this outer layer is called the epidermis, and in root it is also called as epiblema or rhizodermis, and it is also known as pyliferous layer. Pyli means hair-like structure. So these root hairs are arising from this epidermis, hence it is also known as pyliferous layer. So this is root hair and this is the epiblema. These both will be common in both the dicot and the monocot root. And the next part is the ground tissue region. This ground tissue region composed of the cortex and the endodermis. This cortex is made up of parenchyma cells with a lot of intercellular spaces. So these are the spaces which are present in between these parenchyma cells, which are common in both the dicot and the monocot root. And this cortex region will end by this endodermis. This endodermis is the innermost layer of this cortex. And these endodermis are in the shape of barrel. So these endodermis cells are barrel shaped cells, and it will be closely packed. And in between, inside this endodermis cell, it contains thick bands, and that bands are called the Casparian strips. So these are called the Casparian strips, and this Casparian strips is made up of suberin, which is an waxy substance. So this suberin is the waxy substance. These are present here. These are the Casparian strips, and this is the waxy substance. So because of this, the water cannot enter inside through this endodermal region. But here are the cells, some endodermal cells, which is called the passage cells. Because in these cells, these Casparian strips were absent. So because of that, this water from this cortex region, that is the root hairs will absorb the water and it will send to the cortex region. From that cortex region, the water has to come to this xylem. It will come inside through these passage cells. As these cells is passing the water, it is known as passage cells. This is the ground tissue which is common in both this monocot and the dicot root. And the next part is the stele. That is, it is composed of pericycle, vascular bundles and the pith. This pericycle is single layered and it was present inside this endodermis. So inside this endodermis, this pericycle was present. And this pericycle helps in the formation of lateral roots. So lateral roots means this is the primary root, and this primary root, secondary root will arise, and this secondary root is also known as lateral root, and for the formation of this lateral root, this pericycle is helping. And next is the vascular bundles. So vascular bundles means xylem and phloem. So this xylem and phloem are arranged radial, exarch and tetrarch in dicot and polyarch in monocot. So we can see about this. So radial means the xylem and phloem will arrange alternatively. So you can see here, this is the xylem and phloem, then xylem, phloem. So that like that it is arranged alternative manner. That's why it is radial. So we can see is common in both the dicot and monocot. There also after the xylem, phloem, xylem, phloem, xylem, phloem. Like that it was arranged alternatively. Hence it is radial. And next is the exarch. So exarch means the protoxylem will be towards the periphery and the metaxylem will be towards the center. So protoxylem means the xylem which was formed at first. The first formed xylem will move towards the periphery and the new xylem will be present at the center. So that is the exarch. This is also common in both the dicot root and the monocot root. Right. And the next is the tetrarch. So it was the vascular bundles are tetrarch in dicot root. That is tetrarch. Here you can see four xylem and also four phloem. That is tetrarch. And in monocot root we can see there are so many xylem and so many phloem. So it is called as polyarch. Right. That is polyarch. And the next is the conjunctive tissues. The tissues which are around this phloem are called the conjunctive tissues. We can see some tissues which are around this phloem, that is the conjunctive tissues, and the conjunctive tissues in dicot root is made up of parenchyma cells. So the cortex and the conjunctive tissues in dicot region, it is made of parenchyma cells only. But in monocot root, these conjunctive tissues are made up of sclerenchyma cells. Right? In monocot, the conjunctive tissues are made up of sclerenchyma cells. And next part is the pith. This pith, these old plant roots does not contain pith, and only the new plants will contain, the new roots will contain the pith, and old root it will not contain this pith. But in monocot root, this pith will be present, and this pith is made up of parenchyma cells only, with so many intercellular spaces where it will store the starch grains, that is the food, it will store its food in the pith. So in monocot root we can see the cortex region and the pith region was made up of parenchyma cells, and the conjunctive tissue alone is made up of sclerenchyma cells. But in case of dicot root, all the cells, that is the cortex region and the conjunctive tissues, everything is made up of the parenchyma cells alone. This is the internal structure of this dicot root and the monocot root. Here we can see the overall similarities and differences between these two roots, dicot and monocot root. And these two roots are made up of three types of tissues. They are the epidermal tissues, the ground tissues, and the stele, that is the vascular tissues. Here, this epidermal region. First is the root hair. It was common in both, and these root hairs will arise from these epidermal tissues. And next to the epidermis is the ground tissues. First is the cortex. This cortex region is made up of parenchyma cells with a lot of intercellular spaces, and these parenchyma cells, here it will store the food. That is also common in both. And next to this cortex, this cortex region will finish by this endodermis layer. These endodermis cells contain Casparian strips, and also the cells without this Casparian strip is called the passage cell, because this passage cell will allow the passage of water. That is called the passage cell. That is also common in both. Next to this endodermis is the stele, and is made of pericycle, vascular bundle, and the pith. So this pericycle will be common in both these root, and it helps in the formation of lateral root. And next is the vascular bundle. So vascular bundles means xylem and phloem, vascular tissue, xylem and phloem, and they are radial and exarch. That is common in both. And the difference is this dicot root, it is tetrarch, that is 4 bundle of xylem, and they are polyarch, that is many number of xylem and phloems are present. And next is the conjunctive tissues. These conjunctive tissues are the tissues which surrounds this phloem. So the conjunctive tissues of the dicot root is made up of parenchyma cells and the conjunctive tissues of monocot root are made up of sclerenchyma cells. And the next is the pith. This pith in dicot root, the pith will be absent. That is, it is absent in the older plant but it is present in the younger plant. And in monocot root, the pith was present and that pith is made up of parenchyma cell within the cellular spaces and it will store food in that. These all are about the internal structure of monocot root and dicot root. And if you have any doubt in this, just type it on the comment section.